Hi, everybody. Welcome to Business Matters, the Broomfield Chamber of Commerce podcast. I'm your host, Pat Monticelli from the Chamber of Commerce. And as you know, we've been using our Business Matters podcast to talk about all sorts of different aspects of our COVID-19 situation, the economic impact, the impact on nonprofits, the impact on job seekers and companies who are either looking for or have to lay off employees. One thing we haven't touched on yet that we want to get to, and we'll do it today, is the mental health impact of the COVID-19 situation. And I am thrilled really to have Janine D'Anniballe from Mental Health Partners with us today. And Janine is the Director of Trauma Services for Mental Health Partners. Janine, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Pat.
You know, we have not, as I said, we've not yet broached, at least through these podcasts, the subject of mental health in this pandemic. And it's a huge topic to talk about. I saw a number from the CDC that 20% of Americans have some form of depression prior to the COVID-19 situation. And we know that's not the only mental health issue that might be floating around out there. From your experience, what kind of impact is this having on those that are already having some sort of mental health issue?
I think it's having an enormous impact. Matter of fact, not only that statistic you said, 20% already have depression, right? Same with anxiety. And this time is just exacerbating any other kind of underlying mental health issue that exists. We know calls to the Colorado crisis line during this time have increased by about 48%. That is a huge increase. So people who are distressed enough to call a crisis hotline volume going through the roof this time of year. So it's very, very concerning. And that was only data that was taken through the end of March. So now here we are at the mid-April, and we don't even really know what the impact is yet now, but we can only imagine that it's just increasing.
This is probably not, certainly not an easy answer, but for those with existing mental health issues, conditions, what's the best course of action? What can you do to help?
Oh my goodness, it's challenging during this time. So, but first and foremost, I think what's fueling the mental health crisis is this sense of kind of isolation or disconnection from other people. So what's critical is that people are connecting out for support, whether that's with loved ones or whether that's with professionals, like at Mental Health Partners, where telehealth options are available for counseling to actually work through some of those feelings. That's first. And second, Pat, is really making sure that we are practicing as much healthy habits to build resilience as possible during this time. So for instance, I also read where use of alcohol is up about 50% from normal. And while that might be understandable, it's not great for people with underlying anxiety and depression. And so how can we find other ways to cope, right, that isn't going to substances for that kind of self-soothing?
For folks that, so let's go to the other side of the equation. For those that have never experienced depression or anxiety, this is an unprecedented time, and there's a lot of feeling of uncertainty, there's a lot of feeling of being out of control, with the situation, not being able to control your environment. What about those folks? Same issues apply, or same treatments apply, if I'm using that word correctly?
Yeah, for sure. Same resources would be available and encouraged, right? Even if this is new territory for people feeling this sad or anxious or depressed. We've had unprecedented financial impact. So worry about, can I sustain financially right now? And maybe even people close to retirement, what that's looking like. If they had money invested in the stock market that is seeing a dip, right? That's enough to cause anxiety right there, first time anxiety for anybody. And then of course, Pat, there's this other threat of feeling like, can I get sick? My loved ones might be sick, particularly if they're in a vulnerable population, older adults or people with pre-existing health conditions. So that adds a layer too that's very new and unique to this situation.
Your caseload at Mental Health Partners, are you seeing a huge increase right now in the people that are asking for help, needing help, coming to you for help?
We are, I mean, we are definitely seeing new clients come in, which is interesting during this time. Like you might think, well, are they really going to be comfortable with this telehealth model? And so far, I think that they are. And the level of distress is high enough that people are still reaching out to seek services. Yes.
How can folks support themselves when they're not talking to a mental health professional? What can people do to try to manage the situation when they're not on a telehealth call or in a room with a mental health professional?
Yes. So first and foremost is trying to give their day as much kind of structure as possible. So simple things, right? Like getting up at the same time that they normally get up, taking a shower, getting dressed. I mean, just the idea of like staying in pajamas all the time with not getting dressed, that can start to wear on you after a few days. So really like keeping that structure. Making sure that they're building in healthy habits like getting outside, still exercising, walking with social distance, being mindful of what they're eating, simple things. And then one really big thing actually is limiting the consumption of the news media. Really trying to, particularly, we're most vulnerable when we first wake up in the morning and before we go to bed. So maybe giving ourselves some time to start our day, to get into our day before we're checking in on the news, and then limiting that consumption maybe into the evening hours where we're doing things that are more calming or stress reducing, so that we stay informed, but we don't inundate ourselves with that information.
And that was going to be my next question. Social media is playing a huge part in the information that we're getting, and it's not all accurate. It seems to come from a lot of different sources. Are there some other tactics people can use when they're inundated with information? How do they manage that? How do they control that?
Yeah, I would say picking one or two really trusted sources for their information, right? And sticking to those trusted sources that they access intentionally. And then this is the other key. My personal belief is consuming things that it aren't necessarily visual, more that you're listening to or reading. You're more in control of that than you are with being kind of assaulted with visual images, and that can add to the stress. So I think that's a good strategy.
For We've talked about this. There are people who are losing their jobs. There are people who are not sure when this is going to end. There's a lot of things and that's what's so interesting about this is there are so many pieces of this puzzle that are completely out of our control. We have to wait for the virus to peak and to start to decline. I think that feeling of helplessness plays a lot into this. How can people manage the things they can't control? What strategies are there to take a deep breath and try to process those things?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head that the more we start to perseverate and worry about those things we can't control, the worse it is because we can't control it, right? So really what we try to encourage is people to focus on what they can control today, right? What actions they can do that's still within our agency, that make us feel better, that make us feel connected. And literally, I mean, this is a tried and true statement, but one day at a time, and try not to look too far forward because we don't know. We honestly do not know when this is going to lift and what it's going to look like. So really trying to stay in the moment and make our best choices for ourselves based on this moment today.
For adults, a lot of us have seen crises in the past. Nothing to this extent, but we've had to deal with crises in the past, in our society, in different things. Our children, though, this is a very different time for them. This is something that has got to be difficult for children to process. And a lot of us as parents are staying home with our kids now. How do we help our kids navigate this situation?
Boy, it's rough. I mean, I think first is just validating that their worlds have changed, right? And a lot of things that, as all of us, but there's not maybe having the full understanding of really why, but just knowing that they've lost a lot. So just validating those losses and letting them feel that, and not necessarily trying to make it all better, but just letting them feel sad or worried about not seeing their friends or not being back in school. And this is the thing with kids, though, making sure that they're also still having time to connect and play and be kids and have fun, and not necessarily take on the worry of the collective kind of culture, right? That can easily be done just by them absorbing the news that they're hearing, right? So somewhat limiting them from that if you're able, and keeping some of that, again, more joy and even pleasant naivete, right, in their world.
You touched on something earlier about connectivity, and that's one of the things that is so critical for humans, to be connected to other people in some way, shape, or form. I would imagine that right now that that's critical for people to try to, however safely possible, maintain connections with others.
It really is critical. You know, Pat, a lot of mental health problems begin because of the isolation and disconnection, right? Often people start drinking or using drugs because they feel disconnected, or the depression or anxiety. So we have to make attempts. And this Zoom or whatever, you know, platform we're
Sure.
using to connect, it's not ideal, but it is better than nothing. It is still having conversation, connection. Um, Taking a socially distant walk with somebody is still acceptable, right? With wearing our masks. So we can do those things. We just have to really put it in our day to make that happen.
And the last thing that I wanted to ask you, I would imagine that there are a lot of people out there that are trying to manage on their own, and that maybe should. And so, as we go through this process, what would you tell people who are feeling the struggle, feeling the uncertainty, the fear, the doubt, um, but feel like they want to handle it on their own? I would imagine that the best thing to do is to reach out to someone.
Absolutely. I mean, first, people can feel like they're all alone in their suffering. And what we know through mental health partners is we have a community of people who are connected to our services, that, and it is helping to feel like there is someone they can check in with to talk about their deepest worry or fear, or this, you know, this stress about this financial situation, or worry about their loved ones, whatever it is. So help is there. You're not alone. This event has taught us that this Zoom platform works, right? People can do it from the comfort, the safety of their home. They can do it from their car if they want to have privacy and confidentiality. You can drive somewhere and Zoom in to a session, right? So just reach out and know help is there.
Talked a lot. We've talked a lot about a lot of different things. Is there anything, any one glaring thing that we haven't discussed yet that you wanted to mention?
Yes, Pat, I would like to mention to keep in mind that during this time, there can be some people that their staying at home is not a pleasant experience if they're a victim of violence or domestic abuse or sexual abuse in their home. And that's a whole different layer of this trauma, right? While most of us are here and it's not ideal and it's inconvenient, some of us can truly not be safe in our environments. So to look for that in our fellow community members, friends, to have an eye toward that, and making sure particularly we're strategizing to help those people, to get them to reach out, because help is still available for them. Shelters are still open for people who are living in violent situations.
Janine, I appreciate you being with us today very much. Thank you for taking the time. Before I let you go, I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit, to give us your 30-second elevator conversation about what Mental Health Partners does in the community.
Mental Health Partners is a community mental health center that serves everyone from infants through older adults. And every type of issue, we have Spanish and English services in Spanish and English. And so reach out to us. That main number is 303-443-8500, and we can get you connected for services.
Great. Thank you so much again for being here today, Janine. We really appreciate it.
You bet, Pat. Thanks for the opportunity.
And don't forget that the Broomfield Chamber has a lot of ways for you to access resources. You can go to our website, which is broomfieldchamber.com. We have a COVID-19 information and resources page. We also have a page of businesses that are still open for business. Make sure to check both of those out. We have a Facebook group called Broomfield Area Business Strong. Just go to Facebook, look for that name, Broomfield Area Business Strong. You'll find a lot of information, again, about folks that are still open for business and how to reach out to them. We'll also be updating that with other information about the COVID-19 situation in general and how to access resources. We'll put that on that Facebook group as well. And don't forget our YouTube page. Go to youtube.com, search for Broomfield Chamber of Commerce. You'll find all of our Business Matters podcasts as well as the rest of our other videos. Make sure to like and subscribe on Facebook. We'd love to be able to get this information out as far as we can. And if you subscribe, you get notified when we have new video updates. For Business Matters, I'm Pat Monticelli. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.